is Rochelle Ruffner, and I'm going to be demonstrating a talk-to-text for you on this science paper. And some tools I'm going to be using are a black pen just for underlining and writing out my thoughts. I'm going to have a red pen for anything that I find that's confusing or I don't know and I want to come back to, and a highlighter for anything that I feel is really important or a vocab word that I should pay attention to. All right, so starting off with the title, I'm grabbing my red pen right away because it says Epigenetic Research for Space Exploration, and I have no idea what epigenetic is. It sounds like it's got genetics in it, so I'm thinking it has something to do with genetics, but I'm not sure, so we're gonna be finding out about that. And then advancing our understanding of how the space environment affects the human body. So that sounds like it's gonna be another hint at what we're gonna be looking at or reading about. This picture is pretty eye-catching. It's got the Earth and a satellite, it looks like here, and right here I recognize a double helix as DNA. I know DNA doesn't float in space like that, so I'm assuming that they're just highlighting how we're going to be talking about genetics in some sort of way. Right, 60 years ago this October, a tiny little beach ball sized satellite. Okay, I know what a beach ball is, so I played with those before, and I know what a satellite is. That's the satellite here. A tiny little beach ball sized satellite named Sputnik. I know Sputnik. All right, so they talked about that in October Sky. That's one of my favorite movies. And it was a Russian satellite. I'm just going to write a Russian satellite that orbited the Earth, and it was the first one up in space. It had to do with the Cold War, so I remember that from the movie. So a satellite named Sputnik would usher in the beginning of the space age. So usher I'm going to highlight because I feel like that's a good vocab word. Usher I know to be people that help walk you down the aisle. So maybe it's another word for bring into in the beginning of the space age. So it kind of led the way into the space age. Since that time, several space exploration achievements have transpired, and many have included humans traveling in space. So I know we've had a lot of space travel. I know the astronaut John Glenn, that rings a bell. And then we had the moon landing. So I remember learning about that in space. All right, but humans weren't exactly meant to live in outer space. Our bodies are uniquely adapted. Ooh, I'm going to highlight that word, adapted, because that is a vocab word that we use in biology, and I know it to be like survival of the fittest, adaptations. Adapted is to be able to survive in an environment. It's like different ways. I'm just going to abbreviate environment there. So adapted. So our bodies are uniquely adapted to the Earth's gravity and environment. So I was right on track there. So if we want to travel longer distances into space, Mars, for example, and I know I've seen this in the news, astronauts are training for Mars. Then we need to know how the space environment will affect the human body on such a long trip. Okay, when we use the word affect, that kind of reminds me of in science where we typically talk about when something has an effect on something else. And I'm actually going to highlight because how the space environment will affect the human body on such a long trip. That's something we need to know, and it sounds like it's research based. It's like an experiment. And it actually, I remember this being said again up here, so that's repeated. So this is definitely an important point. And I'm going to predict that the author is going to tell us more about this as we go. Knowing this will possibly allow us to develop ways to prevent or even reverse any harmful effects from occurring. Okay, so what are harmful effects that occur? What harmful effects? And from occurring to what? Occurring with what? So one area of research that scientists are keen on investigating is epigenetics. So there's that word again. I'm going to highlight it in red because it's a word I think that they're going to be talking more about. Okay, and it looks like here it is again. So epigenetics, it might be a definition here. Epigenetics looks at how internal and external environmental factors affect DNA in a way that changes gene behavior but does not alter the underlying genetic code. Okay, so that's a really long definition. I need to break that down a bit for myself. Epigenetics looks at how internal, I know that means inside, and external is outside. How internal and external environmental factors affect DNA. So how inside the body and outside the body affect DNA in a way that it changes gene behavior. Okay, I'm going to circle gene behavior. Not sure what is gene behavior. What does that mean? And I'm going to kind of put a star next to that with red. But does not alter the underlying genetic code. So I know genetic code and how that is with DNA, because that is like the A, T, C, G, A. That's like the DNA genetic code. So this part isn't altered. So alter, I know they do that with dresses. When I need them resized, they say that it's an alteration. So I'm going to think that this doesn't alter, so it doesn't change, maybe.